This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.
And still with the End Bad Governance protests, the appearance of Russian flags at these protests in parts of the northwest in particular have raised concerns about foreign influence in Nigerian affairs. The concerns have been serious enough for the Russian embassy in Nigeria to issue a statement saying that, quote, the government of the Russian Federation as well as Russian officials are not involved in these activities and do not coordinate them in any way. For more on this, I'm joined by Jesse Atta, who's a risk operations and intelligence coordinator at Beacon Consulting, a security intelligence firm. Mr. Atta, good morning and welcome to the conversation.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you on. Let's start off with the reactions to the Russian flags so far and your initial assessment of them.
So far, I believe the reaction has been of major concern from all relevant parties, including the government, private researchers, and just observers of the entire protest. Seeing this call, I think this will be like the first time we're actually seeing such distinct calls for foreign intervention or military intervention in the country, in spite of all of these developments that have been happening in the past few days now.
Is it possible to track where these sentiments originated from?
I believe we are all familiar with the growth in anti-West rhetorics in West Africa at large, especially those driven by factors such as distrust in Western influence. We've seen Pan-Africanist, or what we describe as nationalist ideas and agendas in the Sahel, and which led to coups in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. We see the distrust for Western support for an oppressionist government in the state of Gaza. We see the sentiments driven by the Ukrainian war with Russia. We also are familiar with the age-old Middle East issues concerning Iraq, Iran, and Western intervention in those particular environments. And when you come back to Nigeria, you see that many have this distrust for government and lack of faith in the country, particularly with dominant factors like the economic situation in the country, which has largely led to this protest, high unemployment and inequality in society, and many have really complained about hunger, and over time, since the 1st of August, when we monitored flags going up in Kano, and on the second and third day we saw an internet sensation on this particular matter, which largely had even also contributed to the growth in this rhetoric, considering the fact that from our own observation, we see this more as a show of defiance, right? People pick up these flags to show defiance against government and its stance, because they believe that by holding up these flags, they are able to trigger government response more effectively to their concerns. And on the other hand, you see that with the issue of poverty, many have seen this as an economic opportunity, particularly tailors that are cashing out on this new initiative by sewing flags and really selling it to protesters at an affordable rate.
Right.
And as the awareness continues to grow around this, the use of these flags as a show of defiance, it continues to grow significant traction across protests, particularly in the northern part of the country.
By your assessment of this, and even when you look at the Chief of Defense Staff statement, he said, look, people should not be used. Those who are flying these flags should not allow themselves to be used. He had also said that they're ignoring calls for a military coup, which is interesting because I've seen an assessment where someone says the flag is not necessarily the Russian flag as much as it is probably the flag of the Nigerian military, the armed forces. Now, it's debatable, but if I combine all these things plus your assessment, it seems like it's not necessarily a strong influence in favor of Russian interference as much as it is simply almost like a dog whistle. Would you say that, or should we genuinely be concerned that there might be people who are trying to set up this agenda?
Absolutely. I think it's only an agenda. When we do want to make it one, like I did mention, it's more of a show of defiance than an actual call for Russian intervention, because we've seen the developments around this around this particular issue. We've seen the burning of Nigerian flags. We've seen the hosting of the Russian flag on unconventional polls and all of that. And I kind of disagree when people say it is a depiction of the armed forces of the defense flag rather than the Russian flag. So the Russian flag is white, blue, and red. The defense flag is red, dark blue, and light blue. And I believe if people had been depicting the defense flag, we would have seen a lot of those flags in the upside down manner and not in the way it has been paraded. And when you look at the burning of Nigerian flags, you kind of understand the angle in which these persons are coming from. And I think that really says a lot. And so far, we give kudos to the security operatives that have, strategically put in some various forms of deterrence, particularly with the arrest of certain persons that were identified as culprits in producing a lot of these flags and selling. I believe so far this is a major form of deterrence to other persons from carrying these flags, as we saw many of those being flown in some parts of Abuja, I believe Nyanya and Papi area. We saw that also flown in Kaduna yesterday at a very, very alarming number. And we hope to see how that plays out today, particularly with the arrest, if we will see more of these flags or see less of them, to actually determine if certain strategies that have been put in place are actually there. But in order to curb this issue, there needs to be more strategic interventions from the government, right, in terms of addressing protesters' concerns, especially those that border around the economic situation in the country and also the high cost of governance in the country. These are some of the key areas that protesters really need the government to speak on.
Mr. Atta, thank you so much for your time and your analysis on this matter. Jesse Atta is Risk Operations and Intelligence Coordinator at Beacon Consulting, joining me to discuss the appearance of Russian flags at protests in parts of the country, particularly in places like Kano, Katsina, Kaduna, and even the capital city, Abuja.
This is Radio Now 95.3 FM. Come for the news, stay for informed conversations.